I guess I've got this as well, but I don't know when this gets turned on. Maybe this is just the belt and suspenders part of it. Well, good morning. I am happy to be invited back to this. This is a great forum, and I think this is really important for us to be able to have a dialogue between, the great Defense Department and those that we support, as well, and talk with industry. I do not have a pitch like I did last time. I don't have slides. I'm just going to open with a few of my thoughts, and then we'll probably just take some questions. Maybe that might be the more useful. It's interesting because if you haven't noticed, we find ourselves in times of pretty disruptive change right now. And some people are a little bit tense about it. You see some wringing of hands in different corners. Man, not me. I'm excited. I'm truly excited because I think we're in a period where we are ready to tee up some difficult but necessary conversations. You know, we have a lot of things in play, a lot of things in motion about where the Defense Department is going to go, where this President's priorities and our Secretary of Defense's priorities will lead us as a Department of Defense. And I think those are conversations we need to have. And having gone through the last year plus as the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, doing a lot of introspection. I mean, you hear us talking about some of the transformation that we're doing in the Air Force. But we're doing it to meet the threat. We're doing it specifically to understand the changing character of war, the nature of the environment today and into tomorrow, to make sure that we are adapting the force and building the force of the future that's going to win tomorrow while we maintain the readiness of the force today. And so those are conversations that need to be had. So you've probably heard me talk about more Air Force. I believe we need more Air Force. And so it was almost like you couldn't say that. Well, I'm the Chief of Staff of the Air Force. If I believe that's what we need, then I need to articulate that. If that doesn't happen, those are decisions for policymakers above me to make, and there are other priorities, but at least I need to articulate what I think we need, and that is more Air Force. But when we do that, I want to make sure I don't sound just like the needy service. It's just give me more, give me more, give me more. So more Air Force is actually more than just more capabilities. More Air Force actually means getting more out of our Air Force. And if heard through the wrong lens, you would be like, oh, here we go again, more with less, more with less. Well, actually, it's not necessarily more with less. More Air Force also means making sure more of our airmen understand their role in this complex environment, in potentially a high-pitched battle in the Indo-Pacific, and how that's changed from what we're used to doing for the past 20 years in the Middle East. That means more Air Force focused on training as units to prepare what will be more complex in getting our weapon systems in the air so we can go dominate the skies. That's getting more of our Air Force attuned to that. It also means more tooth to tail. Everyone is sort of the unkept secret is about excess infrastructure. And we know that those are challenges there. And I can't remain silent on that. And I don't think we should remain silent. If we want to get more out of our Air Force, we need more tooth and less tail. And we know that we have excess infrastructure. And Congress is committed to work with us. So I am ready with our Secretary of Defense, and I really look forward to when we get our Secretary of Air Force and Undersecretary of Air Force confirmed so we can continue some of this momentum. But infrastructure is an issue. There was an NDAA, it was passed recently about because of the impression, and it's probably a good impression, that all of our facilities and infrastructure are not being cared for as much as we'd like them to. So the FSRM, Facilities Restoration, Sustained Restoration and Modernization accounts, Congress has a sense that we aren't funding them enough. So we try and fund to 2% of plant replacement value. So that's the overall plant, and that's a goal we strive for. We don't often meet that. And Congress has said that's not enough because your infrastructure is falling apart. And so they put in an NDA to approach a ramp to where by 2030 it'll be 4%. Well, for the United States Air Force, that's $13 billion more per year. That's unexecutable. And so if that's the case, first of all, if we have excess infrastructure that we don't need, and then we're having to pay extra for that excess infrastructure, that's not more Air Force. That's more tail, less tooth. So we need to get after this infrastructure challenge. So these are some of the things we're working on to make sure, first of all, that we get more out of our Air Force in lethality, in combat readiness, and capabilities that the nation needs. But also, I think we also just need more Air Force as well in those capabilities and in the capacity. And so I want to make sure that before we go and request that of Congress and request that of others and go through our administration, that we've got our internal house in order. And so I feel very confident that we've dialed in the areas where we can get the most out of the Air Force we have, and some areas where we believe will be the most effective for the nation, consistent with this administration's priorities and the current national defense strategy, and looking forward to the new national defense strategy as part of this administration. We've already seen some pieces of that through some of the priorities that have been laid out by our secretary. That's the job. So more Air Force. I believe the nation needs more Air Force, and I will continue to do that, but not in an irresponsible way. And so with all this change going on, I'm excited, because I think we're finally teeing up these big, hard decisions that we've been sort of dancing around for a while. And then whatever that answer is, then we go and execute. But we don't have to try and divine what it is. We're teeing up some of the big decisions, and in the midst of this change, I'm ready to go. And so I'm ready to sort of lean into whatever those are, but go faster, because the one thing that is against us is time. And so we can sit and debate and try and come up with a perfect answer, or we can come up with the right vector and start moving out and adjust on the move. Because like I say, if you want to change course, you have to be on a course. And in order to be on a course, you have to be moving. Otherwise, you just stand there changing directions. So I'm all about getting on the right course and then adjusting the course in motion. And I look forward to your questions. And I'm really glad to be back here with Jim and the team here. And I'll open it up to Jim. You can ask the first one or any questions anybody has.
General, it's good to see you again. So recognizing decisions have been paused, what did you learn about the first part of the implementation of the integrated capabilities command provisional? We certainly learned some lessons, and no matter what the decision is, that will allow you to vector. Can you talk about any of the lessons learned?
Absolutely. And so, again, for those of you who don't know, I think most are aware, and I think this is another thing where times are changing, so people sort of freaked out. Oh my God, we're pausing everything. Everything's going back to what it was before. Stop. You know, during this last year of evaluation, we were looking towards how we would transform the force to meet the moment. We have a new administration and a new leadership team. If I'm a new leadership team, I certainly believe I should be afforded the opportunity to look at all those before, on my watch, we decide if we're going to go left, right, or go the same way. So I not only respect that, but I welcome it, because we need to have the understanding of our leadership that what we're doing is consistent with the path that our secretary and our president have put us on. So I'm welcoming of that. I do believe, I have some confidence that this will continue after we get the chance to talk with the leadership. Because here are the thing, the fundamentals are right. So what we have learned about the fundamentals of why we need integrated capabilities command are, they're right in front of us, and they have been right in front of us. We have, for lack of a better way to say it, we have been building our Air Force in pieces. And when you build your Air Force in pieces and then try and assemble them at the last minute under the pressure of the yearly budget and the POM, it doesn't work out as well as you'd like it to. And that is not with malice towards anyone. But when we look at the portfolios that we have, and we look at parsing capability development for the future fighter force that happens down in Langley, as well as the ISR force, as well as our C2 force. So now even within one major command, they have to make prioritization decisions. And those prioritization decisions may be prioritized within that command, but not necessarily across the enterprise. So while they're doing that, over at Scott Air Force Base, they're prioritizing the Rapid Global Mobility portfolio from top to bottom. At Barksdale, they're doing the Global Strike portfolio. Hurlburt, they're doing special, et cetera, et cetera. And when these come together, these almost baked proposals come up on the tyranny of the budget cycle. We're trying to fix it at the very end, and there's never enough. So when one of the commands says, here's our priorities, and here's some regrets. Regrets means things we can't pay for, but we want other people to. Well, we couldn't afford this, which means it wasn't at the top of their priority list. But we scoop up all those regrets, and those at an enterprise level may be some of the most important things that we need. So I know we like to kick around to who's doing base defense. Well, when we start thinking of things under platforms, this platform does this platform does that, those things that stitch it together across a mission are left out. And when those gaps are there, you find yourself with a bunch of capabilities, but if they don't fit together, you don't have a mission. So that was a long prelude to the answer, which is one of the main things that we learned is we need to start with understanding what the mission threads are, not the platform capabilities. And so one of the things that has not paused, because it was already in execution, is Integrated Capability Command provisional. So we already have a small subset under Major General Bull Mitchum, who's punching way above his weight class, who are undertaking the very difficult but necessary task of looking at some of the key missions that we have, not just the functions like air superiority. Air superiority is something you need in order to enable other things. But if you're talking about how do you complete a counter-maritime kill chain from start to finish, what does that take? That takes across platforms and some of these things that are maybe dropped out when you build your force platform by platform by platform. If you build it with a mission thread in mind, now you have an understanding of what it really takes to do the whole thing. So by building those mission threads, that enables us to have a force design that is coherent and comprehensive from the start. And why does that matter to you, industry? Because you shouldn't have to go to, with a good idea or some partial understanding of what our force design is, and go and interface with somebody at Scott or at Langley and say, here, I hear your problem, I think we have a solution. And at that level, they go, this is a great idea. And suddenly you start thinking, okay, maybe I'll fund them. Maybe I'll put some more IRAD dollars against it. But then it doesn't make it through the corporate process. And now you've essentially lost some of that money. When you come through Integrated Capabilities Command, our vision, you should have a better sense of what the holistic force design is. And you'll have more confidence that if you're going to spend your IRAD dollars on some set of capabilities, whether or not it's going to make it into a force design. That's sort of the idea and the concept behind it.
Right here, General.
General, thank you for doing this. Brianna Riley with CQ Roll Call. House Armed Services Committee leaders asked you and other service chiefs in the letter last month to identify systems, processes, et cetera, that are no longer sort of in line with the NDS and to identify those efficiencies for them. We hear that data will be included with the FY26 budget request, but you talked a lot here about infrastructure as being sort of your target. Are there other processes or systems that you looked at or uncovered as part of the review that has been ongoing? And if so, can you sort of shed some light onto what those are and how you made those decisions? Thank you.
I think the letter that to which you're referring was largely around infrastructure, and so that's why I focused on that, and it was. But there are other processes that I would advocate for. Now, again, these are things you're hearing from me, and these haven't been vetted through the Department of Defense, but we're talking about processes. I think one of the things that you'll hear probably from not only myself or from other service chiefs is that as we're executing the budget that our taxpayers have been so kind to give to us, some of the programs are complex. And having the flexibility to adjust money from one to another, if you've heard one of my mantras is solve for agility, I think this environment rewards agility more than trying to make big bets in long-term futures across the board. And so the ability to have a process that makes it easier for us to, as we understand and learn things through the development of a program, to be able to shift the money from one part of the program to another part of the program to let the entire program accelerate. I think that's something we've been interested. But largely, it's been about the infrastructure piece. Once you start opening up the process, you open up a big can of worms. And so we were just been largely focusing on the infrastructure piece.
Right here, General.
Hey, General. Michael Baer, thanks for being here, and thanks for your optimism, too. It's great to see that these days. Not everyone is. Your point about mission driving everything. Yeah. And in this world, the mission I'm concerned about is contested logistics in the Indo-Pacific in a long war. Are we spending enough time on that? I mean, is a lot of bumper stickers, but we don't see a lot of change in behavior and platforms that will enable that against really sophisticated peer.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think that the frustration is there because we see that there's a shortfall there, and yet we haven't really come to grips with how to address it. I'll go back to my optimism. We always knew it was there, but a lot of times when we conduct our exercises or our war games in order to learn, in order to understand how we need to get better in our training or in our capability development, we have some objectives, some training objectives or things we're trying to learn in a war game. And so we normally start with fights on. Here it is, let's start at the fight, but without a full understanding of what it takes to get to the fight. So one of the initiatives that we've been doing within the Air Force, from what we learned over the past year, is scaling up to larger scale exercises and more robust and complete war games to ensure that we take into account those things. Because once you've identified you have a problem, there's no hiding from it. And so once you grasp the scope of the problem, now you get attention to it. But you don't get attention to it until in that war game or in that exercise, it is the cause of failure. So we know intellectually that if you fail in contested logistics, that you're not going to be able to sustain the fight. Or if you can't get into the theater, the fight's over before it started. But until you actually exercise that and you say, aha, it's that particular point or that particular point, then you can draw out the capabilities required or the TTPs required or the changes in the way that you need to do your joint force design. And so I think the move forward is that now we know it is in general a problem. When you do the exercises and the war games that are taking those into account, I think we're now starting to pinpoint some of these hard decisions that are going to be there. What are those hard decisions? Is it more prepositioning? Is it lighter footprint? And again, some of these we have to think about how we got here. And so right now, even as an Air Force, and we consider ourselves pretty agile and pretty fast, we still roll pretty heavy. Why? Because when we developed the capabilities we hadn't thought about having to go into theater with a light footprint and be agile under attack. So we didn't have those as key performance parameters of a lot of the platforms that we built. That is now coming back to haunt us. So some of those things that are driving some of the contested logistics issues that we're going to have to solve. And I think the more we exercise it and the more we push it in our war games to say that could be your single point of failure, will finally drive the attention that it needs.
Right here, General.
I don't hear. I see, but I can't hear. There we go.
Hey, General Allvin. AJ Jarnigan, Expansia. You've been a great advocate recently in your messaging of priorities around readiness, specifically aircraft availability in the fight. Could you decompose readiness specifically in some areas of concerns, as well as confidence as it relates to how do we really focus on readiness, which is a broad topic. When you think of improving and enhancing readiness, talk to us about, decompose that a little bit more if you could.
Yeah, thanks very much. It was a great opening, too, because when people think of readiness, they say, okay, mission capability rates or aircraft availability rates, and that's true. Those are issues that are perennial as you get an aging fleet that requires more and more maintenance to keep it up, which requires more and more manpower to keep up those platforms. That becomes something of concern because that's a larger amount of your budget that's eaten up in keeping those platforms ready. But there's a mission readiness as well, and it's just not having the platforms be ready that's important. And so that's why when I think of the readiness, I think of not only making sure we have our priority platforms, the ones that we need are going to need to be the most important for today's and tomorrow's fight, but also the airmen ready. So on the platforms, we know what the problem is. We know generally it's the increasing age and the more putting through depot and all those sort of things that we try and attack. What we have done in the past, though, is when we try and preserve programs, we take a little bit of a haircut in each of those, in the weapon system sustainment, in the flying hours. It's almost like we hope the next year is when the wheelbarrow full of cash is going to come. It's not coming. And if it is, it's not coming just for that. So we have stopped, our priority is to stop the bleeding on that and ensure our weapon system sustainment and flying hour programs have some predictability in them. Because people underestimate all the things that go into weapon system sustainment, which also has a human capital element of it, a workforce element of it, and as you have reduced predictability in that and unreliability of that, that whole part of it suffers. But the other part that I want to talk about for just a second is actually the mission readiness. The mission has changed. The mission is now not just ensuring that the aircraft get airborne and then they go fly and do their mission. It is ensuring that they come back and you can rearm and refit, and you can do that all under attack. We talk about logistics under attack. We aren't practiced in generating and regenerating combat power under attack. So when we talk about mission readiness, it's about making sure the airmen are ready. Are they ready to not only do their primary mission, but to do rapid runway repair, to make sure they can secure the aircraft, to make sure you maybe do casualty movement in things that we haven't thought about before. This is overall mission readiness rather than just the platform readiness. And so it runs the broad swath and really attacking it on all fronts.
One more over here on your right side.
Yeah.
Sure. Is it? Okay. I don't know if you can hear me or not,
Yeah.
but Michael Morrow with Breaking Defense. Now that we have a full year stopgap in place,
General Spain testified about it a little bit last week. I was wondering if you could just elaborate on the impacts that you're expecting from the CR, modernization initiatives that could take a hit, and any kind of relief that could come.
Yes, I'm going to give you the most unsatisfying answer you ever thought of. Because now we all understand, and when Elmo was talking, he was really referring to the experiences that we've had in CRs and long-term CRs and what those are. This particular continuing resolution, like all of them, is unique. There are certain anomalies allowed. There are certain things. So this one is going to be unlike any of the other ones. So we are currently analyzing that. So I cannot give you with any sort of specificity what that might look like as compared to a full year appropriation. But we're certainly unpacking that right now and taking apart the language and understanding what that might or might not mean. And as that becomes more clear, it'll manifest itself in the way that we're going to be able to spend the money and how we can preserve readiness and the modernization accounts. I really just don't have all of the full details unpacked in order to give you a good, solid answer on that.
Right here, General.
Hi, Vanessa Montalbano with Inside Defense. Just to pull on that continuing resolution thread a little bit more, I just wanted to ask, what type of adjustments or reductions do you anticipate having to make throughout the remaining of the fiscal year, and which accounts do you anticipate accepting risk?
I'm a broken record. It's the same thing here. Until we unpack and understand what the anomalies are, what the things that are allowed, and that, I can't give you that answer to understand how we're going to respond to that, because this is a unique continuing resolution.
And one more over here. Hi, Brian Everstein with Aviation Week. Going back to your discussion earlier on ICC lessons learned so far, I was wondering if you could connect that to force design and how you're looking at your modernization priorities under the guise of Mission Area 1, Mission Area 2.
Yeah, thanks very much. So that is another area where I believe that an integrated capability command is going to really pay some dividends, in that we now have a developing and a more maturing force design, which is different from the other force design. Again, the force design that we are looking at, first of all, we talk about Mission Area 1, Mission Area 2, Mission Area 3. We need to understand that that is part of a force design that is much broader than just the high-end fight in a highly contested environment. Our force design also includes fundamentally defense of the homeland of threats in and through the air domain. It's fundamentally the nuclear deterrence, in which we have 2/3 of the triad and 3/4 of the NC3. So that force design includes those two as the foundation, but then in these different mission area designs, this integrated capability command will help us through those mission threads understand the balanced capability mix. And this is where I talk about I'm solving for agility, and this is probably not comfortable for industry, but this particular environment does not favor, again, long-term big bets that we think we know what the future is going to be for the next 25 years. Because if you're wrong, you're really wrong, and the ability to reinvest is sometimes tough. But as we're looking at the Mission Area 1, Mission Area 2, Mission Area 3 types of capabilities, the asymmetric that are disruptive early on, that provide dilemmas to where you don't have to use all of your high-end kit from the very beginning, this is a new concept. But understanding what and how much and what proportion, that's a learning curve that we're on. So as we develop the NGAT family of systems, we look at the collaborative combat aircraft that we're 2 prototypes are going to be flying this summer. We're going to be on a learning curve with them. Understanding just what they can do, that will determine the capability mix between that and our high-end platforms that they will be integrated with and aligning within the human-machine teaming. What exactly that looks like, the proportion, we don't know yet. And to be able to or to try and drive towards a single solution right now is probably not responsible. I know that's not comfortable, but what we're doing along the way, in the way that we are developing those capabilities, and I don't want to steal Dale White's thunder, because he can go to town. I know he's going to be coming after me, talking about the way that we're procuring these new systems. This Agile Mission Systems and Government Reference Architecture gives us the ability to be more agile and to adjust into the future, leveraging more of industry. But the Integrated Capability Command will be able to understand that force design and what the priorities are that help us feed into the POM process that says what we should be buying, what we shouldn't be. So that, I think those two link up very, very nicely, Brian. Thanks.
General, Sean Singleton with Beaten Zone Ventures out of Brisbane, Australia. I'm their U.S. venture partner. And in a previous life, I ran the private equity venture capital arm of the Defense Innovation Unit when we still had the X. And when I was there, the only four-letter word that we had was requirements, because a lot of the non-traditionals there didn't really understand that concept. My question for you, building on your previous commentary just now, is how willing are you and other senior Air Force leaders willing to focus in on objectives and outcomes versus actually fixating on requirements?
I think you bring up a great point, and I'm an advocate. This idea of mission needs and being able to describe the outcomes, like you said, describe the challenges that we have rather than being so prescriptive. Because when we are so prescriptive, once again, that's a 20th century model, I think, where we don't know what we don't know. And so we'll tell you, here's my requirements. And when those requirements are actually specifications to the 9th decimal point, well, of course, industry is going to respond with what government asks. That is underselling industry. So I think the idea that we are clear in saying, here are the outcomes that we would like to achieve, and here are some of the challenges we see. What are your opportunities and alternatives to meet those challenges? That's where we're going to get to answers we hadn't even thought of. And so I think that may go to some of the processes that may be under review that I think are worthwhile, is to be able to better communicate the challenges and then let the innovation that exists within industry surprise us. When I talk about, again, when Dale will talk about the way that we're procuring systems now, I think it offers a more open door for that, because we own the architecture, but that means more folks can come in and give their good ideas rather than just us give specifications and then a big prime will sort that out with all the subs. I think that's maybe an outdated concept as well. They should all be competing. And one of my dreams that I have very little control over is I have a chart in my office, the fishbone diagram that shows the Last Supper and the consolidation of the Defense Industrial Base. I would love to take that chart and flip it over and see if we can't take and expand out to the Defense Industrial Base more opportunities to play into our ecosystem. But I think absolutely looking at outcomes and challenges rather than specific requirements, those are just